And we are live. Hello and welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
Together we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename.
And we also founded Codename too.
We're going to be your hosts for this episode and for every episode.
Because when we're not here, the show doesn't happen.
Still checks out.
Today is our 61st episode.
That's a prime number.
Okay, I think we've beat that horse enough.
Absolute nonsense. We've got 7 more opportunities to make this joke before we reach episode 100.
Yes, a veritable bounty of humor.
Got to make jokes while the sun shines.
Hey.
Yes?
Never mind.
You know, I actually never understood that. It's not like you're making the hay. It already grew. You were just cutting it down and baling it. Unless it's not hay until you cut it down.
Yeah, it's only hay once you cut it down and it dries. Before that, it's just grass.
Well, the more you know.
As always, we are here to answer questions about that. Answer development and design questions about idle champions and farming.
If you don't ask any questions, however, you may have to suffer through Justin's one-man reenactment of, what do we got this week? Ant-Man!
Yes, the Marvel movie with some of the smallest stakes. I loved it. You know, they did so much with so little.
Really?
Yes. Not even the tiniest complaint from me.
No, that's enough. Stop. As always, we have pulled some questions from the previous show that we did not get to, and we will answer some of those while we're waiting for new questions to come in. But before we get to those, I do have some updates on items that we have flagged to be looked at by the dev team. So without any further stalling for time, because that's clearly what we're doing.
That's all we do for the first 5 minutes of the show.
We're going to get to those. All right. So first off, I don't have too many fixes or new feature releases listed this week. We do have an update on the offline V2. We did roll that out to Steam at the end of last Thursday. We are still only on Steam currently. There has been some minor issues with that, as well as the progress itself seems to be a little bit slower than previously. So we're working on getting that to be faster before we proceed rolling that out any further. But we're continuing to work on that, and it's our priority until we've got that into a state where we're comfortable having it out on more than just Steam. We do have a number of items that are in progress that are actually being worked on, that have been worked on this week, and that includes getting better cycling in for the champions on console. That's where if you bring up to do a swap on the champion in that seat, you hit Y and it would transition to the next champion. That is getting replaced with just a push Y and then select one from a menu, which I think is going to be a lot better. We'll be making Bud easier to read on console because it does go off the side if you've got a lot of notifications and ultimates. And then we're working on condensing the way the buff icons are displayed at the top of the screen because that can get a little overwhelming when you have a large number of them and they start to dip down into the game screen, and it's just turns into a bit of a mess. So we're condensing all that, and that is also underway. I do have some items here that are still on the list that we haven't had a chance to address yet, and that includes adding icons to the portraits of champions that are blocked due to variant rules that have a feed available that could make them unblocked. Making the animation that pops up the chest faster. That's when you click to enter a code and it animates that thing up. Adding tooltips to gear with a max level, so you know what your progress is towards that max level. Adding an option to quickly return to Area 1 for mobile. If you're on Steam or actually any of the PC UI, you can hold shift and click on that arrow and it takes you back to Area 1, but that's not something you can do on a mobile device or a tablet because obviously you don't have a shift key handy. So we're going to add a click and hold for that. We're going to add additional icons to the quest tracker so you can see which types of season quest are being tracked. We're still going to get in a recall for familiar, an indicator for unread changelogs, check through, make sure every dialog closes properly with escape, and save feats with formations. Whew. It's a big list. All right. Let's get into some questions from previous shows.
Sure. It looks like we've pulled up just a couple because we're getting a bazillion questions this episode. So the first one here from last week's episode is from Digital Jedi 1982, who asks, are there any plans to sync to other platforms? If you started playing on mobile, could you migrate to Steam or Epic?
Yeah, so this is a question that we have historically gotten fairly commonly, but I don't know if we've had this asked too much recently. But sort of due to different rules and variations on the platform's restrictions, we do not have any sort of shared accounts or syncing between accounts Some platforms will allow it, some don't. And just to make sort of things as simple as possible, we just don't support that. If there is an issue on the account you're playing, so if you're playing on mobile and you really, really, really want to switch to something like Steam or Epic, you can raise a ticket. And if it's a case where it is something that is up with your game and it's a circumstance that makes sense to transfer, we can accommodate that sometimes. But typically, that's something that we don't do. Yeah. Next question here is from Saint Dyer. That sounds. And the question is, would it be possible to add the number of completed variants to the time gate window for each champion? And there's a reference here to a public tracker with a mock-up.
Yeah, I imagine the purpose of this is so that people know whether or not they've completed the achievement for that champion. I think it might even be more useful to just show whether or not you've completed the achievement for that champion, rather than just having a bunch of numbers there. But I mean, I think something like this is probably a good idea, a good candidate for a quality of life update to the time gate dialogue. Just because, yeah, there's definitely, we know there are folks out there who are trying to get all those achievements, and just being able to kind of glance at the time gate window and know which champions you still need to get the achievement for is it sounds like a good thing for us to do.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. Looks like that's it for questions from last week that we pulled forward. So on to the new questions. The first question of the day is from Dust7777. Actually, the first 5 questions are from Dust777.
We'll answer a few of them.
Yeah. All right. So the first question here is, why doesn't Season 1 last until the start of Season 2? As far as I can remember, the games I played that have season things, the first lasts until the second starts, and the second lasts until the third starts. Personally, I need an extra week for retired season champion variant achievements, but heck, might as well see if I can help those who are behind. Or maybe that's just self-justifying exercise. Season 1 leeway?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So the reason that we have the seasons be 10 weeks and not sort of 13 weeks, which is what might fit a little bit better into a year, is just so we have a bit of leeway on when seasons start. We want to, sometimes there'll be 3 weeks between seasons, sometimes there'll be 2 weeks between seasons, sometimes there'll be 4 weeks between seasons. But by giving ourselves a bit of leeway there, we can fit them into the schedule and where we want them to be a little bit easier than if we kind of had to finish them by a certain time in order to start the next one. Or we run into situations where like maybe one season is 14 weeks long and the next one's only 12 weeks long or something like that. And one thing we are doing is we are going to have the season dialogue remain available at the end of the season, at least on most platforms, I think. So you can go in there and get any rewards that you might have just not bought during the season if you still have currency left over. And we're also going to be starting or showing the dialogue for season 2 a week early to sort of tease what's in there, what's in the season pass before it goes live. So we are going to be playing around with that stuff a little bit. Maybe one of the things we could play with is keeping the cheaper time gates available for that extra week afterwards, or starting the cheaper time gates a week before the season starts. I'm not sure. It's something we'll have to think about exactly how that would impact things. But the reason that they have a little bit of daylight between them is so that we can shift them around by a week or two in either direction in order to fit our schedule, our release schedule.
Right. And I mean, it sounds like from the question, what they were hoping for was you just run them further, the same content, so that they had longer to finish everything.
Yeah, I think they want the cheaper time gates for a couple extra weeks.
Of course, as per the design discussion, if I had my way, I'd have taken those extra weeks and made it a 5th season. So, you know.
Yes. Yes, that is true.
All right. Next question here, as spoilers, was already from Dust7777. This question is, can you add a week after events to redeem chests through the shop only? Tokens can no longer be earned, free plays can no longer be done, but tokens still remain and chests can still be bought. For those who don't have the time to be around at the time the event ends, forgot which day the event ends, etc.
Yeah, this is something that I think we did in Crusaders, like a couple of days after the event lasted. We kept the store
Some grace period,
open,
maybe
but
24 hours.
I don't know if you could still buy things with currency in that. It's not a bad idea. Excuse me, to have a sort of grace period after. I don't know about a full week after. One of the kind of issues is we don't necessarily want to run that into another season, or not another season
Event.
another event, because things just start to get confusing if we've got multiple event stores available. So yeah, I mean, it's maybe something we could keep up for a couple of days after the event ends, and you could spend any leftover tokens in there. But
Yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, this was something that we discussed at the time when we were designing the way the event system was going to work. And I know there was some technical limitations, not that we couldn't put them in, but that the way the system had been done, that it was going to be a bit of a rework to make it possible to hold it open even just for the store purposes afterwards. And so we ended up not doing that. But I know, like, actually, like, the discussion about having it available for a short period afterward, just as like a grace period to spend your tokens, I guess on chests, which would be the only thing you have an option for there, was something that we had considered.
yeah. Okay, next question here, also from Dust7777.
It's the last one, though.
Last one for today.
At least for now.
The last one of this group. They ask, could you crop the HD Champion key art into the small rectangles in place of the console UI portraits as another option? I think they look way better, and it's a damn shame that they aren't available in-game. Older characters don't have those wallpapers, but still, at least you can start doing it with the newer champions. So this is basically, they want
the key art ones.
Portrait option with the key art.
With the ones that Ivy does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those look great.
Yeah, tell me about it. Eric uses those exclusively for all of his in-company presentations.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for this off the top of my head. I have to look at them and see how they would look.
And
we don't have one for every champion, so it's a bit of a...
Yeah.
It would be a bit of a dog's breakfast of which ones had what. Yeah. Probably not something we would do, but I do agree those look amazing.
Those do look really amazing, and I'm trying to think of like where people can see those if they want to see them. I'm not sure where if we put them up as
the Discord. They're on the Discord.
Put them in the Discord.
Yeah, there's a channel with all of the wallpaper. Yeah.
So go check those out in the Discord. They're pretty cool looking.
Okay, next question. This one is from Lord Java XX. Still looking to redo variants. Is this being considered as a possibility?
Yeah, this is a question we get from time to time, and the general response we give is that we're not planning to basically have free plays for variants where you can replay them over and over and over again. And it's not a very fair reason that we have for it. But the truth of the matter is there are some variants where if you could do them over and over and over again, that there would be ways that you could exploit the mechanics of the variant to do things that we don't really want you doing on a regular basis. Farming things at a certain rate or doing stuff like that. Now with free plays, we try not to have too many of those mechanics very often, but with variants, we like to go a little bit crazier and experiment with different mechanics and try different things to switch up the gameplay and make it interesting. And some of those things just wouldn't be balanced if you could do them over and over and over again. So it's not that most of the variants aren't ones that we would be comfortable with people replaying all of the time, but there are some that we wouldn't necessarily want people to do over and over and over again.
Okay. Next question. This one is from Super Collins. Super Collins asks, now that Virgil has surpassed Dahani as the preferred DPS for rivals formations, are there any plans to rework Dahani?
Yeah, this is a good question. And I think the answer is yes, we will probably take another look at Dahani. The seasons feature that we've put into the game in the last little bit is a really good opportunity for us to look at some of these champions that are underperforming, especially ones that are in affiliations and popular affiliations. So it's something that we well, Ryan's just writing, or Mars is just writing something here. Oh, Kent is the, yeah, well, Kent and Virgil are kind of together. But yes, they're we'll definitely take another look at Rivals at some point, likely in a season in the future, because we are trying to do, many of our seasons are kind of focused around a specific affiliation. Some of them won't necessarily be based around an affiliation. Some of them might be based around a certain race or class or alignment or something like that. But we will definitely, I'm sure, in the future do a Rivals season, and we'll probably look at having Dahani as one of the key champions there.
Okay, scrolling back up here. What do we got next? Next question here is from Emote. Are you going to be changing anything about reforging legendaries in the legendaries changes? It feels really bad to reforge one dud legendary that doesn't apply to my formation, only to get another dud legendary that also doesn't apply to my formation, and then have to wait a week to try again. It's a complete waste of scales and time.
Yeah, I definitely hear this. I've seen this complaint, and it's definitely a legitimate one. It is a challenge to get exactly the kind of legendaries that you want on the champion. That's not necessarily, like, we do want it to not be, we want to find a balance between really, really easy and really, really annoying and hard. And I don't think we're there right now. I think we definitely need to pull that a little bit towards the easy side. But again, we don't want to go too far in that direction. With that said, I don't know that we have any major changes to reforging coming in the legendary changes. We're more focused on the initial crafting costs for this pass of legendary stuff, and then I think we'll be looking at reforging and the effects and other things in a future pass on the legendary system. Next question here is for you, Dave. It's from Knockout Panda, and they ask.
It's a question that I've probably already covered, but we'll.
Yeah, you know what? It got asked. We'll answer it again. And they ask, any update on the rollout of the new background party feature? I'm on Epic, and I would really like to use it.
So yeah, as I mentioned at the top of the show, it's still Steam only until we've sort of figured out get it running a little bit quicker. There were a handful of reports of issues that came in over last weekend, that we were immediately looking into. I know we got a number of minor version builds out to attempt to correct some of those issues. There were some issues where players were reporting an unable to reset, a reset failed error message that we did put some tracking in for that, and then found that it wasn't occurring at the rate at which we may have been led to believe, but it was still happening probably about 7 to 10 times a day. So that's something we're looking at as well. We want to figure out exactly what was happening there before we roll that out. And I know some of the changes that went into it have made it a little more accurate, but the unfortunate part about the more accurate is that it's taking longer than we'd hoped to run. I think there was a noticeable difference in in time it takes to complete the offline progress. I think one of Mark's theories was that some of the earlier progress was actually bailing out, or the original system was bailing out a little bit early, which was resulting in you getting less progress. But of course, the progress system didn't take as long. Personally, I'd really like to see that offline progress complete in under a minute. If it gets over that, I feel like you're just sitting there for far too long. So we're working on some performance improvements on that, just to make sure that we get that sort of tightened up, because no one wants to sit there for 3, 4, 5 minutes waiting for their progress to complete. And I think in some sort of pathological or edge cases, we're seeing that right now. So that's a top priority before we roll it out to other platforms. But it's being actively worked on, and with any luck, we can get those performance in the next week or so, and then out to the other platforms. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now this next question, Justin, I think just the name and the was enough to highlight it.
A question last time, yeah.
And this was from Mr. Nobody Nobodyson, captain of the Spelljammery McSpelljammer face. And their question was, trying to gauge how you're doing in the trials of Mount Tiamat. or sorry, trying to gauge how you're doing in the Trials of Mount Tiamat can be tedious. It would be helpful if the health bar gave some indication of the current party DPS and if it would be enough to finish them off with the time remaining. Maybe it could change color or have some text projecting the end day once Tiamat is doomed.
Yeah, I mean that's not a bad idea. Adding in maybe some little ticks or something in there that kind of visually show how far Tiamat's health will get on each day. That would probably be more colorblind friendly than changing the color. So yeah, I mean I think there's probably some optimizations we can make there to make that feel a little bit more doable.
Okay. Well, I see you didn't like that question. I'll just move on then.
That one. I like that question.
Oh, sorry. This, for those of you listening, Justin crossed out the next question, which I was going to ask him. So I guess we're going to hold off on that one. We'll move on to the next question. This one is from Mize Hari. And the question is, was it intentional that Modron automation for resetting levels be targeted to only long-time players? As a newer player, it requires too many familiars to set the party back up, making it detrimental.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think that Modron automation and multi-party are definitely something that we intend to be a little bit later game. If you sort of rush to those and you haven't had a bunch of time to sort of get gems and set up like a basic set of familiars, then I think it can be certainly very challenging to make efficient use of it. So yeah, I mean, I think Modron automation is definitely one of those things that is intended for later game players. Certainly not end game players, but certainly having a bunch of familiars is definitely extremely helpful in getting that to function efficiently.
Yeah, definitely a later game feature. Yeah. Okay, next question. This is from Timnos. Why was Virgil's shiny cap so low when he came out? Follow-up, can information like caps and such be included in the CNE blog? Maybe even ahead of time.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the answer to this question. I know that design definitely flagged one of Virgil's items as needing a cap. And I think there was potentially just an issue with the numbers that were used for that, where it didn't exactly line up with the max level of normal versus the max level of shiny. It didn't give the same effect. So that was definitely a whoopsie on our side. I think including information about item caps and stuff, I think that seems to me like stuff that we can include in the CNE blog. So yeah, that's something we can look at maybe including in the future for any items that are capped, aside from, of course, the cooldown gear, which is always capped with basically the same stuff.
Okay. Next question is from Alpha Crawl. Alpha Crawl asks, can you confirm or deny that over-leveling the champs gives a double DPS for each doubling of levels past the soft cap?
I believe the answer to this is yes.
You believe the answer is yes?
The base DPS of the champion, I believe, is like before any sort of buffs or upgrades or any sort of effects are applied, is just the level times the base DPS. So if that is indeed the case, then doubling the level would double the base DPS. And since everything that applies to that is multiplicative, that should mean that you would get a 2 times to your DPS. Now, of course, in an exponential game like Idle Champions, doubling your DPS will get you, maybe 1 more level. So it's definitely the DPS the benefit from over leveling your champions falls off very, very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next question. This one is from Question Colon. Has any research been done on Trials of Mount Tiamat health bar acting in reverse at the end of the day?
Yeah, I saw this question. I think Emote also asked a question like this a little bit further out that I didn't highlight, and then I saw this one. I'm like, okay, I better address it. But the reason I didn't address it before is because, as far as I know, no, we haven't had a chance to look into this yet. So I don't have a satisfying answer for you. But it is still something that's on our list.
Okay.
Next question here, I guess for Dave from Alpha Kroll, who asks, is there a reason Briv skipping bosses is quicker, less waiting for server calls, than actually defeating the boss, waiting for the gem bag? Shouldn't the same calls and waiting happen in both scenarios?
Yeah, see, if I wait long enough on a question, you can read it, you know. So for the Briv skips over bosses, one of the things that we did when we were trying to sort of improve the overall server cost for this was that we actually set it up so that the Briv skips are on a timer or on a count, and I can't remember what the count was set to. I feel like it was something like 10 initially, 10 boss skips before making a save, just because it was going through them so rapidly, because otherwise it was making a call like every second. And so the Briv skip ones actually they queue up and then they go off after, like I say, whatever the queue count ended up being. And I think we started at 10, and I don't know if that's been adjusted since. Whereas if you're doing each individual boss, then that means every individual boss has an individual call. So yeah, less calls are faster than more calls. So that's why that ended up being longer or faster for the skipping with Briv.
Yeah. Next question is from Winterborn 2, Winterborn 1, and then the number 2. They say, question: how are you both doing? Hope your week was good. Also, Jeremy, pretty please, can we have some information? Hashtag Jeremy4Familiar.
Well, that adds a day or a week.
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
How
I
you
can
both
answer the
doing?
first. I'm doing great. Yeah,
Good.
The week's good.
Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Got my flu shot this week. Feeling good.
So far, we'll see how that works out.
Feeling protected from the flu.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is a good opportunity to plug our upcoming Extra Life stream. That's what it's sort of been. Our week has been busy getting
Speaking of
things.
everyone getting the flu.
Oh, let's hope not. That's no. Don't say that, Justin. No jinxing that. Coming up next week on the 18th and 19th, we're going to be doing our yearly 24-hour gaming marathon and Extra Life stream. And I know, Justin, I think you had something you were going to do for that. You willing to commit?
Yeah, okay, sure. I'm going to be on stream twice. Dave can speak to the first one, but the second one, we're going to be doing a little session that we did last year, where I designed a champion live.
Oh, you're not going to do a one-man show?
Only if we don't get any questions for the Founders Q&A.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we're going to be designing, or I'm going to be designing a champion live on stream. I actually think what I might do instead of designing a champion live is actually taking an existing champion and reworking them, similar to to what we would do if we were taking a champion to put them into a season. So that'll be super early in the morning on Saturday, at least if you're in Pacific time. It'll be 8 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday. So definitely tune in for that, and we'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah, and in addition to that, both Justin and I will be on at 11 o'clock on the Friday, PST or
11 a.m.
AM. Yes, 11 a.m. Are we in PST now? Or are we in daylight? Our daylight time is over.
We're in standard.
We're in standard time now.
Yeah.
That switch always throws me.
Stupid standard.
Still recovering.
Time. I hate standard.
Body wants to wake up at 6:30. What was I saying? Oh, yes, we'll be doing a Q&A, not specifically, though, a Q&A like this one, but more of a company-wide Q&A, so asking us about Codename, other games we've done, and of course, you can also ask Champions questions if you so desire. And then later in the evening, I will be hosting with one of our developers, Mark, the yearly Beat Saber stream where we do our augmented reality 2-player competition Beat Saber, and so that should be a lot of fun as well. So we will be doing all of that next week on the 18th and 19th.
Some folks were asking if we were going to do an hour of pronouncing people's names.
Oh, I think the only available slot at this point for something like that would be at about 4 in the morning, and I really don't think I'm going to be there at 4 in the morning.
No, I have a child. That is my excuse for not being there at 4 o'clock in the morning. I need sleep.
Okay. So yeah, busy week.
Yeah.
Next question.
let us move on.
This question is from Question Colon, and Question Colon asks, any hope on the Strength Core's missing node?
Yes, this
Justin?
hasn't come up in a little while.
No.
I've been enjoying this not being in the in progress bit, but I guess if Dave doesn't bug me about it, then it falls upon you guys. Yeah, no progress on that at this point. Like we've kind of mentioned, it is a gold find node, so it's not exactly going to result in a huge amount of DPS unless you're using Rust, I guess. So yeah, right now, still not sure exactly how I'd like to fit that in. One of these days, I'm just going to snap and just go put it in somewhere where there's like currently a blocked slot. And the core is going to look asymmetric, but I'm just going to have to deal with it. So, yeah.
Then the question will be, when are we going to fix the asymmetrical core? All right, moving on from that, as I know it's your favorite question. The next question here is from OG17, and OG17 would like to know, how many enemy types count as stacked on top of other enemies for the new seasonal? Was there any specific intentions when making such an esoteric quest?
Yeah, so I think so this is a quest. I think it's a week 9 seasonal quest. And basically what it requires you to do is go find the goblin battle stacks in the I think there's a bunch of them in the Tomb of Annihilation campaign. Basically go find those and just kill them over and over again, because the goblins are stacked up on top of each other, and as you kill them they jump down off the stack, and it's really fun, and we wanted to point people in that direction. I think the thing that we messed up is we just worded it really wrong. So we made it read like if you just have like 2 enemies who are kind of using the same space, that you kill those ones, and that's how you get credit for it. And then of course people do that and they don't get credit for it, and they write in a ticket and they're like, what the hell are you guys thinking? And we're like, yeah, we definitely mucked up the description on that. So the intention was, and the intention for a bunch of those kind of more esoteric quests, I guess you could say, was to have people sort of gather together and go figure out what mobs we're referring to, like, or where you can find a certain boss to kill them over and over, and that sort of stuff. And I think that one we just got a little bit too vague with the description. So I think we'll continue to maybe do some of the quests like that, like go kill a certain boss, go kill a certain mob, go kill mobs when it's raining or snowing or foggy or whatever. But I think we'll just try and do a better job of describing them so that there's not a dual interpretation there, especially when the other interpretation sounds like it makes a lot more sense than the one that we inevitably did.
All right.
Next question here, and I assume we're going to be getting a giveaway at some point in here because it's past 2:30. But the next question is from Philistine47.
Philistine.
Yes. Who says, the current version of the game client is v0.475.3. What can you tell us about your vision for v1.0, which would presumably be the finished version of the game? Thanks.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not quite, presumably it would be the finished version of the game, but unfortunately that's not actually what that number is for us. The in-game client version build number, or version number, is actually just a build number. It's a way for us to tell the clients apart, especially for if we've put out an update and you want to make sure that you're on the latest client. It's also a way we filter for different features as we enable them across clients, so that we know that if we're rolling out a particular event or a new feature, that we can check and say, especially on the back end, if this feature is enabled yet, and if the data for that should come back or not, or if players should be indicated that they need to update. So currently what we're seeing there, that v475.3 or v0.475.3 is its build version 475. That's a build 475, and a 0.3 is that a minor client update went out on that for a change that didn't have any significant changes in it, but it was probably some bug fixes. And I think specifically on those ones, those were fixes for some of the offline progress v2 issues that came up. We've been putting those out fairly quickly to make sure that anything we rolled out with that isn't holding people up. So yeah, so unfortunately we don't have a V1 vision. The game is by its nature is that we continue to add new characters, new features, new everything on a regular basis, and so I don't know that we have like a final version. I think we don't want to get to the final version because that means we're not updating it anymore. So.
I think definitely there's a challenge there of like we're a live service game, and so the point at which you see version 1.0 is the point at which we're not updating the game anymore, which kind of sucks. So I think we'll just continue to update that number and make the middle number bigger and bigger, and probably not see a 1 at the front of that.
Yes, and as pointed out in the chat, when we got to version 404, we did in fact have that missing. We think we're funny.
We think we're funny.
Yeah.
We're not.
Hey, someone noticed the potato. That was
that's true. We did get credit for that on Twitter. Let's see. It looks like it is giveaway time. So very shortly, that will be pasted in chat. And the way this works, if you haven't been here before, is that every episode of Dev Insights, we give away 42 chests of your choice to one lucky viewer. The way it works is you type in a special word in chat, and that adds you to the giveaway. And then at the end of 2 or 3 minutes, we pick one of the people who said the word, and we let them choose 42 chests of their choice. It can be any type of chest in the game except for Glory of Bahamut chests. So it could be gold Kent chests. It could be gold Virgil chests. It could be silver Rosie chests.
Rusty iron Justin chests?
There's no rusty. It has to be a chest that exists in game. It can't be rusty iron Justin chests.
Oh, brushed
Rusty
copper
bronze, yeah.
QA chest?
No, there's no that. No.
Aluminum chest? When are those aluminum chests going in?
There's never, ever.
I can get a lead chest.
The lead chest, yes, but you don't want that many lead chests.
No, they're heavy. They really weigh you down.
Don't keep them in your house. Anyway, that's going on now. The keyword, it's what everyone else is spamming. So just type that in and you'll have a chance to win. Good luck to everyone.
The golden god Justin's. Wow.
Oh, well, yes, absolutely. That's definitely a type of chest you can get.
Unobtainium. Schrodinger's chest. There we go.
They either contain an epic or they delete your account.
That's Schrodinger's epic.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Let's move on to some more questions. I like questions.
Okay, next question. This one is from Topher, probably Topher. The Returned. Can you please make Voronika more user-friendly? Since Assist the Puppet on your DPS is much stronger than Dispose of the Fool, it incentivizes resetting the run until you get your DPS champ, which has taken me up to 20 minutes of cycling the adventure.
Yeah, so this is a good question. I think the balancing choice that I would make here when we inevitably look at Voronika again would be to not try to adjust the buffs from Assist the Puppet so that they're just as strong on a support or tanking or whatnot champion as they are in your DPS champion. We might have a bit of a disconnect there where your DPS champion is just getting a bigger buff from Assist the Puppet. But generally the idea is that it offers you, Voronika offers you 3 champions. One of those is hopefully a good champion that you can use in your run, and then you can make use of that champion after you are done with Voronika's quest. So it's it is something that we can definitely tweak in the future. We don't want you to take 20 minutes of cycling the adventure to try and get exactly the champion you want. Obviously, we have that same problem with DM. We have that same problem with, mainly DM and Voronika right now, to a lesser extent, maybe with some of the other champions that have a kind of a random effect like Shaka or Tatiana. But it's not something we want to encourage. So I think when we get to looking at Voronika again, we'll probably try to pull that closer together. Next question is from Mike Baldy, who asks, is the goal for offline V2 to simulate everything the online version of the game does? If so, and I don't mean this the way it sounds, but how do you expect to figure that out with bugs and scenarios that bog down performance in standard online play? it would seem like you would have to refactor the way the online game version of the game works, which is a pretty big task.
Yeah, so there's a number of things in this question sort of to tease out, because there's that last bit is 100% right, in terms of if we were planning to do like a full simulation, when bugs come up, they would actually end up being blocking or causing issues in that progress. I think maybe first to address this, sort of the goal of the offline V2 wasn't specifically to simulate everything that the online game or like the running game does. I guess saying offline and online, sure. So it wasn't intended to simulate everything, but primarily was to refactor a big portion of code that had sort of kind of eroded or had been written on other code that had been written on top of other code that had been written on top of other code, because the system had grown from initially being something where it was much more similar to like what we did in Crusaders, where you had like a set DPS, and then based on that DPS and based on monster health, you could literally calculate sort of how far you would progress, which held up until the DPS really didn't match that as the abilities got more complicated. And so then it ended up turning into a system where there was a number of areas were simulated with the characters that you had, trying to run through their abilities, and run through a simulated online play, and then take that window that was simulated that could be run very quickly, like by not having any of the graphics active, and then sort of extrapolate that out and think, oh, you could probably get about this far, and then do some kind of sanity checks where it's like, all right, well, we think you could probably get this far, go to that area, level up the characters as much as they would have through that period, and then check to see if you can beat that boss and progress from there. But even that ended up having a number of issues in it, in so much that it doesn't necessarily properly track various ability stacks that would have otherwise let you get through. And as players have found, sort of tackling very specific abilities like Briv Skip was something that didn't handle, and so it got more complicated from there. And then we ended up adding the Modron and the automated reset portion to that, which then made things even more complicated. And sort of over this whole period of time, that whole system ended up having system built on top of system built on top of system, that got complex to the point where trying to understand how it was actually interacting and working with the other pieces of the game made it really, really hard to make any improvements to that system. And if you change something, you typically ended up breaking something else. And then to make matters worse, it was hard to track down any bugs with it, because as each offline progress portion happened, we then stored that and aggregated it server side as like, here's a chunk of offline progress that has happened, like for background parties, for example, which run every 10 minutes. And then if something went wrong and that got counted as being viewed, then you'd come back to a message that said, hey, this is the offline progress you got, but that might be incorrect because it had aggregated something wrong. Anyway, long story short, which really is not what I'm doing here. The new system was pulling all that apart, writing clean code that knew everything that needed to be handled, adding in very specific logging so we know each process instead of aggregating it all in one spot, adding in specific locations to handle things like using potions, using character abilities, catching up on things like stats for challenges for Modron, and then once we've got having all that pieces in place, and with the logs we've got, now we should be able to, when we get a report that says, hey, I didn't get what I was supposed to get for this offline progress, we can then go back through the logs, see exactly what happened, exactly what offline progress was run, how far, how long, and then hopefully see what went wrong and where it went wrong, which helps us isolate the system and fix it. So a sort of long-winded way of saying the objective wasn't to simulate everything, but it was to make it so that we could actually have a system that we could build upon that wasn't built on a sort of a foundation that had we built on a better foundation, I suppose is a good way to put it. So that's sort of the first portion. The second part of the question here, which is, let's see, and I don't mean this way it sounds, how do you expect to figure out what with bugs and scenarios that bog down performance in standard online play? So this is actually probably part of the reason why the current one, as I mentioned, is running a little bit slower, that it is running through sort of a more accurate version, and that is actually slower because of how slow the online play runs. Even if you got speed potions running at like 10 times, you find that the game actually starts to lag quite a bit. And if we try to run it as fast as possible, it doesn't end up being more than 30 or 40 times, which then can mean that if you're trying to run through a couple hours offline, that can still take a couple of minutes. So working on smart ways to be able to skip forward and check what your progress should be is what we're looking at right now. Things like, jumping forward a couple of bosses, doing sort of the level ups you would have between there, then attempting to defeat that boss and seeing if you can do that, and then jumping forward a little further, or not a little further, but in larger chunks, and then sort of scaling back when you get past something that you can't defeat. And that should hopefully let us calculate sort of further without simulating everything perfectly. But it is going to be sort of a back and forth on how much is how quick it can be and how accurate it can be. And certainly one thing that would make the overall offline progress faster is optimizations to the standard play that also make the standard play faster, because then that would immediately trickle down to the offline progress. Okay, I think I got it.
You should. We got another 14 minutes. You can keep on going. No, yeah, I mean, I think that's good. I think one of the big impetuses for us doing this rework of the background progress and offline progress was because if you look at in our online bug tracker, in our public bug tracker, they're kind of the top, I don't know, like 5 to 10 issues. They're essentially all based around or centered around this offline progress system and the calculating of the background progress, how much you've done, and then also what state your party is in at the end of it. And so I think that a lot of this is really just to try and address what are basically, the top issues affecting players. So I'm really very hopeful that once we get through kind of the first couple of hurdles of this new system, that it will be a much better experience across the board for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely, and for everyone includes the developers who have to find bugs in it. Yes. So it's,
yes. Yeah. Because obviously we don't want the game to be buggy. But finding the what is causing those bugs can sometimes be extremely difficult, to say the least.
Definitely a challenge. Mm-hmm. Okay, next question here is from Mai Zahari. And they ask, to follow Topher's question on Voronika, any thoughts on letting Potions of Respec work to re-roll the character options rather than forcing a reset?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is in relation to the question that came just before that one that Dave just answered, which is about 25 minutes ago, about the Voronika and having to reset in order to get the DPS champion you want. And yeah, I mean, we did think about this when we were designing Voronika. The concern I have with something like this is that if it takes 20 minutes of cycling to find the DPS champ you want, that could potentially be 20 or 40 potions of respec, and we just don't give out potions of respec that often for them to kind of be used in that way. So I think we'd have to be looking at maybe some other way of getting potions of respec and how we value them in order to have this kind of thing make sense. I think if we were to do this, we would probably expand it out to other champions as well, like DM, like Shaka, like Tatiana, maybe to reposition her friend formation slot. But for the most part, most players don't have the number of potions of respec to really make this make sense. I see that some people one person in chat here is saying that they're sitting on 2,800 potions of respec. I would say that is unlikely to be the normal number that your average player in the game has, and I think it's very important for us to not take extreme players into account when making decisions that will affect everyone in the game.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. This one is from Zone Stalker, or Zones Stalker. There's extra S in there. Will the Modron core from the season be available in the future another way?
Yeah,
we have an answer for this now.
We actually have an answer for this. We talked about this last week on this stream, and then we also, I believe, we released a blog post about it as well. So you can go find that on the Codename website. But the basic answer is the Modron cores and as well as the skins and the feats, as well as anything else that's kind of premium. I think the familiar as well. will be available in wild offers 6 months after the season ends. So the best way to get it is obviously by just playing through the season, but if you happen to miss it, then it will be available in the future in those wild offers.
All right.
Next question here is from Di Margero, who says, would it be possible to add a retired / timegate only champions filter to the timegates?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good option. That's probably a good option for a filter on there. I don't see any reason why we couldn't put that in, unless we're completely out of UI space, in which case we're just stuck with what we have. No, just kidding. No, I like that idea. Let's tag that and get it done.
Tagged. Oh, one clarification for the thing there. The feats from the season will be available for the 50,000 gems, just like premium feats are often available.
Yes, we can learn all about this at blogs.co. Wait a minute, we don't have that.
No, we don't have blogs.
We should do that.
Follow us on Twitter. It's there.
Okay.
Next question. Do you really want me to ask this one?
Sure. I do.
Disappointed. Next question is from Niskix, who says, "Good day. Will we be able to adopt #Jeremy Clawford, the cute tiger we do love, before season 2 starts?"
I really don't know. I mean, this is based on how many people ask about this. That's another week, so...
Keep on pushing it back.
Is he serious? Next question. Well, no, eventually, right? Next question is from Leash68 or Lesh68. Let's go with that one. Lesh68 asks, can we get an indicator to show which champions are evergreens? Thanks.
Yeah, I think this is probably something that we could pretty easily do. Have a little evergreen tree there, or or something on the character sheet to indicate that a champion is an evergreen. Yeah, I don't see any reason we wouldn't want to do something like this, sort of core evergreen or event, and maybe show which event a champion comes from. So yeah, I think that's something we could do, and we could potentially even do that kind of on the time. Well, I guess we can't open time gates for evergreens. Never mind. But yeah, that's something we could do. Someone's asking in chat here, what does evergreen mean? That's a great question. Evergreen champions are champions that
they never lose their needles. They stay green.
They stay green all winter, and they don't lose their needles. But in our game, evergreens are champions that you don't get. They're not one of the core 12 champions that you start with, and they're not a champion that you get from an event. So evergreen champions in our game include Dritz. It's one of the first evergreens that people normally get. I guess technically Hitch is also an evergreen that you can get from signing up for the newsletter. And then a bunch of other ones like Olcoria, Rhea, Dragonbait, Blushi, Xeraphon, and any of the ones that I've forgotten. I guess Nerds technically is an evergreen. And apologies to whichever one I forgot.
Yes, and as the chat's pointed out, they do in fact stay smelling pine fresh.
Yes, you can hang an evergreen champion in your car, and it'll smell nice.
We'll cover up those
Azaka,
nasty car
yes.
smells.
Apologies to Azaka.
All right.
Okay, next question. We're running low on time, so let's see if we can get through one or two more. The next question is from Bruce Flash, who says, players are getting stuck at the calculating offline progress screen without any ability to get into the game. What is causing this, and do we have an ETA for the fix?
So yes, we've had a couple of issues that have resulted in this exact sort of symptom, which is the stuck on offline progress. I fixed one today, which had to do with a specific circumstance resulted in some players having getting set on an adventure ID that didn't exist. There was one earlier in the week that Mark fixed that was regarding a divide by zero error in some of the offline progress. And I know there was something else he fixed too, but it's been a handful of issues. Every time we get one of these accounts and we can grab the account and load it up, we find what the issue is. These ones are actually quite nice in that regard, because once we have that up in the debugger, it actually shows us what's going on. So we did have 3 of those that were patched and fixed. I think actually the most recent one, I know Mark was pushing a fix for the back end portion of it just before lunch. So I know that that's getting looked at. So there were a handful of these, and they have been they've been one at a time been being addressed. And I guess earlier, about a week ago, there was an issue on iOS that had a similar thing, but instead it just got into the calculating offline progress and then it crashed. So that also had been addressed. So we've had a really bad week for calculating offline progress. But as we catch those, we're getting them flagged or fixed. But yeah, so
yeah. And sometimes I'm not sure. I was reading another question. Sometimes I think this issue is it just takes a bunch of time. And so if you just kind of leave it for like 5 or 10 minutes, potentially you can get through.
Yes, that's true. There were some that were taking an extended period of time, but there were definitely ones that were erroring out, and you can't tell the difference, unfortunately. If it takes longer than 5 minutes, I would at that point be saying, all right, this is a bug, email in, and we'll look at the account. Okay. One more question?
Sure, you want to do the next one?
Sure.
I can answer it. You can ask it.
Sure. This one is from SLM 493, who asks, would you consider removing the increased level requirement for multiple time gates in a row for the same champ when they are discounted for the season? For some of us who have progressed enough in the game, mid to late players, it's no problem, but I can see it being difficult for newer players if they do not have the same champ more than 2 times.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question. I think that there's definitely some strategies to kind of mitigate this. So if you're trying to level up, or if you're trying to get gear from the season champions for like 3 champions, and obviously you can just go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and they'll end up resetting down. Really, that the thing that was set in place for was to prevent you just running the exact same time gate over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I guess I'd have to take some time to really think about whether or not that is something that we really care about at this point in the game. And potentially I could see that being something that we would remove if we determine that it's not really that important of a restriction for us. If the restriction is just, you need enough time gate pieces to get in there, and once you have those, we'll just kind of consider that the cost to get the chests, and not necessarily that you need to also be able to push a little bit further. So yeah, I think it's something we could consider removing, but it's not something that we have spent any design time on recently.
Okay. So that's going to be all the time we have for questions. Just before we do the outro, though, I think it's worth noting again that for those of you who didn't catch earlier, we will next week, the 18th and 19th, is our Extra Life 24-hour charity event that we run that has all proceeds going to BC Children's Hospital, which is a great cause. Justin and I will be on stream a couple of times. We're going to be doing a Founders Q&A for general codename questions at 11 a.m. Pacific time, as well as I'll be on doing my usual Beat Saber segment with hosted also with our other developer Mark, who happens to be the one working on the offline progress. So I suppose you could show up and ask a question about that then, but better to just pay for some obstacles for our for your amusement. And then Justin will be on again in the morning on Saturday to do design a character or redesign a character. We'll see where that ends up. So definitely don't miss that. Otherwise, that is all we have time for today.
Yeah. If we didn't get to your questions this week, don't worry, you'll have another opportunity. We'll be live again at this same time next week, I guess the day before Extra Life. Before we sign off, though, we'd like to thank our tireless mods. I believe this week it was Mars and Martin again, though I haven't checked, but I'm fairly certain. They're the 2 folks who copy your questions into our questions doc and generally make things awesome in chat. So thanks to both of you.
And of course, thanks to all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, asking such great questions, and for enjoying the game, because without you, no one here would get to do what we do.
And we like what we do.
All right. That's enough for today.
Goodbye, everyone. Why did I have to finish reading your script?
And I don't know. What do we got for an outro, for a hot mic?
We have no hot mic planned today. Look, it's blank right here.
Oh, how about
no, don't do it.
Station toilet stolen. Police have nothing to go on.
Yeah. No, I think it's better when we just don't do one.